Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Yearbook News. I'm here with Ralph Trimmer. Ralph, why don't you say hi to everyone really quickly?
How's everybody doing? I'm very pleased to be here with y'all.
We're so happy to have you here, Ralph. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
You bet. So I've been teaching public school in Texas for, good gosh, 10 or 12 years currently. And I taught before that, but currently 12, all of which have been spent doing yearbook sponsor as well. It was kind of contingent upon my being hired, I guess, when I first started doing this. And my background, I have a degree in graphic design and illustration out of college, and then got certified as a school teacher here in Texas. And I know all of you that are watching, like every state has their own certification process in different ways of doing it. But I postgraduate got certified as a Texas school teacher, as an art teacher, and then later on dialed in on another certification for teaching more tech-oriented visual communication classes. So here I sit and I still get to do the yearbook, which is real cool. So all that background in design and art and illustration and all lends itself to being able to guide kiddos and making good looking products. So
Yeah, I love that. And I want to kind of focus in on your graphic design background. And I
Mhm.
kind of want to hear how that's been able to really influence kind of like your teaching model and also just the way that you help bring these yearbooks to life with your students.
Yeah, I think any of you who have a similar background, and if you don't, I'd encourage you to look into like the elements and principles and the basics of graphic design. Essentially, it's visual communication, and so you're in my case, we produce a yearbook that has elementary, middle school, and high school in it. Okay, but we're producing it for a community, a little tiny town here in Central Texas, and so you have to remember who is your audience, who's buying the yearbook. So even though the kids want to do this, that, and the other thing, it may not always be appropriate for the audience because you have grandparents and whatever. So it needs to be kind of universally acceptable from the standpoint of, hey, I'm sending a message to you. Do you get it? And so from the standpoint of graphic design, that's all it is. It doesn't matter if you're designing a billboard, if you're designing a corporate annual report, it's all one and the same. Does it look good? Will people be able to understand what you're trying to show them? And I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to simplify it or talk down to anybody, but in my eyes, it's that simple. So if I was dealing with a lot of yearbook advisors from all sorts of different backgrounds, sometimes some of you poor folks get like, oh, by the way, you're doing yearbook this year. Like, oh no, now I know why Fred quit, So it can be a lot of fun, it's don't let it be overwhelming, I guess. Just make it simple, make things look nice, And the kids are wonderful. They catch on, and I was blessed. The reason I got invited is Sarah and saw this, and Jessica is our yearbook just looked really nice to them, and so I'm flattered again to be here. But I guess if things look good, people will tell you they do, and I guess that's what we're all shooting for. And a little bit at a time, everybody can do it, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I love you mentioning how some advisors are just thrown into it because
Oh
you'd
yeah,
be surprised by how many we talk to. They're like, "Oh my goodness, we're a math teacher and suddenly we're a yearbook advisor too." And like, it's just like all those things. And obviously you having this background where it's like it's so simple to you, like it makes
it
sense
is.
making it for the audience. Like that's like it's wonderful advice, especially to all yearbook advisors, yes, but there are those advisors that are like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I need the help, they're looking for that. And so it is really
Yeah.
helpful. And like you're saying, the students love it, and they probably kind of will feed off of kind of the passion that you bring and your knowledge as well that you bring into the
Sure.
classroom. So yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I kind of wanted to go over just how your kind of process with United Yearbook, how you connected with us. So starting off, we talked about it a little bit before, but how did you find us? How did you
It
find
was
United
super cool.
Yearbook?
I didn't find y'all. Y'all are good business women and men over there. I think it's mostly women, which I think is wonderful too. But um, Sarah and Jessica, and I don't know which one of you it was, but I received an email last school year at a very, very perfect time. And I won't use names, but the vendor and yearbook publisher we're using, I just wasn't happy with them, and that can
Mhm.
happen. And I was in a position where I was able to make a choice for us moving forward. And so I got I guess for lack of a better term, a very pleasant professional marketing email from Jessica and Sarah. And I was like, heck yeah, gotten back in touch with y'all. And you and I had some fun chatting before we sat down to do this. And things just meshed well. I got a good vibe from y'all. And so that's why I'm here. And I think that's another thing for all of the yearbook sponsors or yearbook teachers is that relationship between publisher and the yearbook staff needs to be a positive one.
Mhm.
And thus far for me, it's been wonderful. And I was not paid to say that, by the way. It just has been so refreshing, and it's a really nice deal. I feel like I'm in a good place with you folks, and I intend to stay there. So those of you that are, I think we're all pretty fortunate, because you deal with some of these other big companies and you'd fast find out you may get a better price, you may not, but there's way more to it than the bottom line.
Yeah.
And both things are working really well for us. You've been very, very good to us. So, but that's kind of how I wound up working with y'all, and looking
Yeah,
forward
yeah.
to looking forward to moving forward from here too.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. And
Yeah.
you kind of mentioned already a little bit about like, like the connection and everything like that. But, what were some of the things, and maybe you can also kind of give some advice to any advisors out there that kind of helped you evaluate and think like, okay, this is a good fit for me, because if, now is kind of the time where maybe some yearbook advisors may be thinking like, okay, do I want to continue on the same contract? Do I want to find a new publisher? And how do they
Right.
kind of manage that and figure out what the best fit is for them and their student body as well.
Yeah, I think we all can relate to the fact that in this digital age, things have become very depersonalized. What I noticed with working with y'all this year is very, very prompt response to questions. I've never sat and done Google Meets. I don't like them. I don't like being on camera. You wouldn't know that from the way I act, but I'm not real fond of being like put in a spotlight. I've got anxiety issues and all, but this is a lot of fun, by the way. But
You're
yeah,
doing great.
it's just a lot of fun to be able to sit and chat with the folks that you're going to be working with. And when we talked last August, it was a lot of laughing, a lot of fun. I like joking around and making people laugh, and everybody just kind of seemed to get along. So that was a huge part of it. I think just that first meeting. And y'all were very, very good about structuring contractual stuff and understanding we're a small school and that we had certain things we couldn't do. And I don't know. There's just a wonderful cooperative environment without going on and on. It just seemed like a really good fit right from the word go. And I think a lot of it was just how y'all, and I think people do not like pushy environments. And it was almost as if it wasn't like, we don't care if you come on board or not. It wasn't that passive, but it was just like, hey, look this stuff over. We'll look forward to hearing from you. And I really didn't have a whole lot of interest after that. My principal and I chatted about it. And he goes, dude, if you feel good about it, I do. And so, yeah, for new prospective people working with United, and again, I'm not doing this. I have no ulterior motive whatsoever. It's just, they're just a good bunch of folks. And before we sat down to do this formally, Jessica and I probably chatted for a good 5 or 6, 10 minutes just about how was your summer? How was this? How was that? It's kind of cool. So I'd
Yeah.
say jump on board if you can. They're good folks.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. So I'd say based on that, like, seeing if you have like a good connection, see if you feel like your needs are heard and what's best for your students, obviously your yearbook publication. Also meet with, your potential publisher if possible, right? Like you were mentioning that first meeting that we had. It was great. We got to talk about so many things. We talked
Yes.
about, virtual workshops. We went over our
Mhm.
software, curbside delivery, flight checking, all kinds of things during that
Sure.
first. And obviously we got to, you got to know me, you got to know Sarah. We got to kind of, establish like a good working relationship,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, so I think it was a vital and important first meeting. Did you come into that meeting with any like list of questions, or were you just ready to kind of like hear from us?
No, I'm I'm pretty laid back. I did have some of which need not be discussed here with regard to contractual things and what have you that are very unique to each
Yeah.
institution. But no, my big deal was how we, from our techie end, put our book together. Would you be able to accommodate us in that way? We wanted to know what your online interface was like if we were going to build using your software. We chose not to use all the bells and whistles and provided files just because that's to my liking. So any of you with
Yeah.
a graphic design background that are now doing yearbook, I know that United very much probably appreciates that in a way, as long as the files that they receive from you are functional. But if that's not a big deal to you, I know that Jessica and Sarah is reps and also is advisors to us, can walk you through the stuff that doesn't work. But once we spoke, as you might know, Jessica, we spoke like last August. It's hard to believe it's been that long.
Yeah.
I radio silence until like it was due date time because we did it all in the house. And then
Hmm.
poor Sarah was like, all right, so do you have this done? Do you have that done? And of course we have our deadline. And then
Yeah.
Sarah and I were sharing on our own cell phones talks at what must have been 4 o'clock in the morning. And so I will say this, it's kind of refreshing because that in that kind of panic stricken mode that we were in, and all things worked out. I'm kind of used to that. But if you guys were able to serve me in that environment at the 11th hour,
Yeah.
everybody else that needs help during the year, and many advisors do, I can
Yeah.
imagine it that you guys are wonderful at serving your clients, because that test was feet to the fire for Sarah.
Yeah.
And she probably, talked to me in very glowing terms, I'm sure. But yeah, that's one thing that was huge. I could tell that Sarah's like, anytime you need to get in touch with us, let us know. And we didn't take advantage of a lot of the stuff you offered as far as visiting with some of your esteemed photographers that help you guys out and all. And I think we'll probably do that, but it's a rather robust offering that you guys have that I didn't take much advantage of, that I'm looking forward to maybe using a little bit more of some of the stuff that you guys can share with us from a how-to basis. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, when you were saying there's definitely advisors out there that need the help throughout the year. So we're there, like you said.
Yeah.
And going back a little bit to where you're saying during we had a second meeting with you and also your students as well to go over the software.
Right.
And you mentioned not using the software. And I just kind of wanted to highlight like, yeah, that's something that we also kind of like to have available to
Mhm.
advisors and, make them understand that, whatever you feel comfortable with, we're flexible. And so obviously we offer our software platform and we're glad that you were able to kind of have a chance to kind of tour it and see what we had to offer. And then you
Sure.
took a step back and you're like, okay, this is what I'm more comfortable with. And so,
Right.
yeah, we're happy to offer that flexibility because, for example, you have that graphic design background, you know what you're doing with Adobe Illustrator and
Right.
everything. And so we're happy to offer that
Sure.
flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah. And
But
it was nice. And it's not a wrap on y'all's software at all. I'm more of a graphic design control freak. And so I
yeah,
just,
no, we get that.
like, and that's not uncommon. And in our area, so, we have our little OCD is nothing to joke around about, of course, but the term gets thrown around a lot. We just like things just so. And so that allowed me that. And of course, it was, you know, with the exception of the 11th hour file dumping, I think it was probably nice for you guys because you didn't have to babysit me. But had we needed it, I know you guys, I feel you guys would have been there for us. So that was very appreciated. And I can't even thank Sarah enough. I think I got to get online and start sending some Starbucks gift certificates out to y'all.
Oh, I don't think so. I think she's just happy that the everything looks great. That's what
Yeah,
she keeps
yeah.
telling me. Yeah. And then earlier you're talking about, you know, virtual meetings. You said you didn't feel comfortable with it, which is funny because the past few times we've talked, obviously it's a virtual meeting and you do, you know, it's very easy for us to communicate.
Sure.
And I think with obviously like the pandemic shift, there was like that, you know, there was a very big shift in like culture and
Oh, yeah.
society. There's like hybrid workers, there's
Mhm.
Zoom meetings, Google meetings, there's all kinds of like changes in that way.
Sure.
What would you say like is kind of maybe like the benefits or even like the drawbacks of having like this kind of connectivity through just like virtually? You know, obviously we're available to do this like kind of meeting virtually, also obviously available through emails, through phones, through everything like that. What would you say are like the benefits or even drawbacks?
You know, I say that I have a hesitance and don't like doing these, but I don't know how many drawbacks there really are. I think it's wonderful. So as a school teacher, we taught this way. Like our school was quarantined.
Yeah.
Like it was like
Yeah.
wackadoodle. And whether you agreed with it or not, or felt it was malarkey, that was what you had to do.
Yeah.
And so that kind of, so whenever there were faculty meetings, I did the blackout. Like I was like, nope, not, I don't like this. I've gotten used to it and I actually like it because now, Jessica, you have a face, you have a smile, you're a person to me, you know, in
Yeah.
text messages, I'm not 16. So on occasion in my elderly fashion, I type all caps and no, I'm not screaming at you. So you don't get that with a face-to-face meeting like this. It's kind of nice to see people and know who you're working with. And I don't know, I think it's kind of cool. You guys remember I held up layouts for y'all,
Yep,
pencil
I remember
sketches,
that.
and we were able to communicate the next
Yeah.
best thing to sitting across from each other. So I didn't have any of this from my prior publisher whatsoever. I don't even know whether it was offered or not, but no, I think I like that this is our communication tool. I think it's kind of cool. I knew immediately, you know, back to when we met and how did I make a decision that I liked working with you guys, but I thought it was kind of cool that you guys were so up to speed on communication and technology. That's, as the Brits say, that was massive.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's kind of cool and it works. And, you know, your backdrop behind you is very professional. It looks like you're on the 11 o'clock news. It's awesome.
Thank you.
So, yeah, it's refreshing. I like it. My background behind me, my camera's not pointed in the right way. I'm not ready for this, but no, I think it's really cool. I think you guys are doing the industry a service by doing this. I think it's kind of cool. Y'all are very polished. It's nice.
Yeah, yeah, it's all about connectivity, you know, and obviously, like I said, culture a little bit changed, but it
Yeah.
is something positive about it is we found a new way that we are able to have that face-to-face interaction, even at a distance, you know what I mean? And so it is positive.
Yeah.
And you kind of already mentioned it a little bit about like, you know, our communication flow and, you know, what would you say that has felt like for you throughout like the school year and even recently with us?
I'm a guy that I know how difficult because I was a graphic designer. I was very, very present with regard to my products being printed, whether it be annual reports or whether it was fine art that I created. And I would visit the print shops. I would go, like, I know what the press foremen are doing when they're working on a 8-color Heidelberg, you know, these 70-year-old men that are the last of the wizards, you know. So I don't want to be a burden to you guys, albeit you told me, hey, we're here for you. I just know that I don't need you 24/7, but what I did notice was, and for all of us that are watching this together, I think it's just refreshing that you are there if we need you. And so the
Mhm.
communication, it wasn't a lot. Like, we didn't have to communicate a lot, to my knowledge. I think if we look back, I could probably scroll and go through our emails and be back at the almost the infancy of our relationship pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that had I bothered you over and over, you wouldn't have taken a deep breath and answered the questions, you know? Yeah. So no, the communication's been great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, that's what we do. You didn't need the assistance throughout
Right.
the year, but like we were talking about, the newer advisors or ones that are just thrown into the pit, so to say, those,
Sure.
we're here. Or, even some experienced advisors, whatever those problems are that need to be
Yeah,
solved, we try to help, figure it out for you guys and help you out.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
that being said, tied into the notion of those of us who feel like they've just been thrown into the fire, and it's not an uncommon thing. It can be a lot of fun, but it can be stressful, especially for somebody that's new to the game and having to adapt to all this technology and how do you make a file a certain size and all that. You'll learn, take notes, and you'll
Yeah.
figure all that out. It's very, very doable. So don't bum out about it. Like, it's kind of cool. And I hope that, if you did get yearbook and you got thrown into it, that you got some kind of a decent stipend for doing so to kind of ease the pain a little bit, but yeah, it's, even if you're seasoned, the one thing I would say, and you and I were laughing about this before we came on air, if you will, is everybody out there set reasonable and achievable deadlines for yourself.
Yeah.
Every year that I've done this, I try to get as much of the school year's activity in to the yearbook as humanly possible. And almost every year I step over the line a little bit too much. And then you end up at the 11th hour submitting things, and make that deadline and what's included in the yearbook, make it doable for you, because it's easier for you to meet deadlines with your publishers. And it's also just, gosh, teachers, we work hard enough. You do not need extra anxiety and stress. It's terrible. And,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to explain to loved ones why you're up at school till 2 o'clock in the morning the last 3 weeks before a yearbook gets turned into the
Yeah.
publisher. And that's avoidable. I'm a procrastinator, and so every year I go through the same punishment. Maybe next year will be better. I don't know. But deadlines, I think you would agree too, Jessica.
Yeah.
Deadlines make them doable, make them reasonable for yourself. No one's going to know except you.
Yeah.
And we do a video, like a slideshow video addendum to the yearbook that gets created, and we're doing it this year. I've got 2 wonderful young ladies that are seniors this year, but we're creating it in Canva and then turning it into a video file. And then that we send an email out to all the recipients of the email, or out of the yearbooks, with a link to the file. And that allows you to kind of add a little bit of extra content, if you will, to the yearbook as an addendum. You're not charging for it. It's kind of a little value added. And I think that's a way to avoid that end of the year rush. You're still going to get all the content you want, but you're not just up to that 11th hour. And down here in Texas, depends on where you live, our track season starts early. But we've got a young man who's being recruited by Major League Baseball teams right now.
Wow.
It's utterly amazing, out of this little tiny 2A school. And we won't get to include him if they end up winning the state title this year in the yearbook. It was only a couple of weeks into the baseball season when we went to publish. So don't be forlorn about that. If you're how come soccer never gets in or whatever? And that was the first thing I was hit with. Well, it's late in the spring, get it in there with a little video addendum and figure that out. And maybe, Jessica, you and I can discuss my thoughts on that. You can add it to a future podcast. It might be something nice for advisors to think about as an option to add on to their yearbook without the stress.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good idea
Yeah.
because like you're saying, there's like those sports and there's also major events that happen at the end of the year.
I
And
mean,
so
graduation, right?
yeah,
Whatever. So
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. So being able to provide that for your students, that goes a long way,
yeah.
and they're able to, they're able to keep that and it's something that, like you're saying, you don't have to stress about it in a sense by knowing that it's still going to be included in
Right.
some way. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a really good idea. Thanks for sharing that, Ralph.
You bet. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we could
It's
talk more
worked
about
for
that.
us. We love it. It doesn't take much energy for my gals to put together
Yeah.
and of course you keep that if we talked about this later on, but you keep it to a reasonable amount of
Yeah.
time. People lose interest
Yeah.
after a few minutes, and then you just say, okay, hey, let's do this many elementaries, this many this, let's include prom,
Yeah.
etc. And that'll be just a neat thing with a bunch of more cute pictures. And everybody knows, heck, you watch a video, you can freeze frame it and pull a picture out of it for you. So you
Yeah.
really you're getting a lot of neat extra stuff. And it's been successful for us. And one of our little boys up here at the school created totally on his own. He's very musically gifted. He created the soundtrack for it.
Oh my goodness, that is
Yeah,
so cool.
neat
That makes it
portfolio
so
piece for the
much
guy.
better.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that is
Instead
so
of
cool.
using copyright okay
Yeah.
music that's kind of so yeah, there's a lot of neat stuff you can do. It sounds like I'm encouraging all these advisors to do way more work than they want to do. That wasn't
Well,
intended. Yeah,
they may love the idea and they'll run with
sure.
it too. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. So going back a little bit
Uh-huh.
to you're talking about like deadlines and everything.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously a lot of just like the yearbook creation process is on your students, right? And
Sure.
so you as an experienced advisor, but also to those new advisors, they have to kind of learn how to delegate
Hmm.
tasks. They have to learn how to kind of build up student leaders. And, I'd love to hear like your process with your students. How did you delegate and, assign page spreads and, maybe go into like what the interview process is like for your staff members and everything?
Sure. Let's start with your last question because that's kind of where it all starts.
Yeah.
So I inherited a group of kiddos. I've been here. This is my second full school year.
Mm-hmm.
So I inherited a group when I came here.
Yeah.
Um, what I would tell advisors that are in it for the long run, it's nice, like you mentioned, an interview process. I
Yeah. Yeah.
teach like Adobe based graphic design is my main teaching field here at the school. And
Yeah.
so what's kind of neat is that's essentially the petri dish for all the potential yearbook kiddos. And you can just
Yeah.
kind of hand pick and quietly say something like early second semester, would you like to be on yearbook with me next year? And you
Mm-hmm.
can choose kids that you have that preformed relationship with in the classroom, and you know who's responsible, um, who is capable of handling a little bit of critique and directive and what have you. That was kind of my stipulation at schools earlier. It's like I choose who goes in yearbook. I said, you let
Yeah.
me do that, and I'm cool with it. The kids I inherited were wonderful, but the roadblock I was up against is the girl that taught before me. So now you got a male coming in instead of a gentle, kind female that was running the show before me. So you advisors will run into that where it's like, well, that's not what they did. And you just have to
Yeah.
you have to let change happen slowly. Um, so I'm blessed here that my principal's like, look, you get to choose them. And so I've kind of got and I'm graduate. We had 12, I think 13 on my yearbook staff. I don't know. Some of you poor folks out there have a whole room filled with yearbook. And I think that almost, you don't get to choose that, but I'm lucky that I only have to deal with 12. I
Mm-hmm.
love kids, but doing yearbook with 20 would be a little bit of a challenge for me because I think it's too many people stirring the soup. But let's say you do have a big staff. Once you get to kind of choose them, it's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. It really
Yeah.
is. The how we delegate that almost you kind of in the same way, who's capable of doing this, who's good at that.
Yeah.
And you're going to have kids that you realize like, oh my goodness, even in middle school, it's like, I can't imagine this is an 8th grader and this young man or young lady, they're going to be something else when they get older, like born
Yeah.
leaders. And then you're going to have the kids that sit and kind of don't do a whole lot of anything. And maybe they just need to be in a room where somebody cares about them. You know, like
Mhm.
I look at a way bigger picture as a teacher, but
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, it's a lot of fun being able to handpick them out of my classes. Delegating is kind of like, you know, who's good. Now here it's a high school, the high school, we produce the yearbook for the entire district,
Mhm.
the little kids too. So what matters for us too is kids of driver's license age who can go out, and our district is itty bitty country town, kinda. It's in Texas, it's called 2A. There's only
Mhm.
one school division that's smaller than us, but we need to get kids to drive to football games. And some of the
Mhm.
drives are 2 hours away. We don't play in a metropolitan area. So
Yeah. Wow.
that's something we have to think about, and some of the advisors that are watching probably do too. So you have to kind of delegate, okay, that's an inside the school photography job. I'll let that kid do that. And then as far as the whole yearbook goes, it's already predetermined how many pages are in it based on student population and then
Yeah.
content. So that is not going to change from this year to next year. It'll be the exact same number of pages, pretty much this much for band, this much for whatever.
Yeah.
And that helps
Mhm.
too if you're consistent. You've got to have a game plan. I also was blessed enough in my career. I worked my very first job out of college. I worked for a magazine.
Oh, wow.
And, and,
Nice.
and I'm
Yeah.
not going to tell you how old I am, but we didn't have computers. We did all of this on, or it was bonkers, but it taught me like exactly like how all this worked in the old days, so to speak. And this digital stuff is just killer. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, to have that steady game plan is huge. So you advisors, like, it's really great. Like, the kids want to do this, the kids want to do that. Look, can we do this? Look at this is what this high school did. You can't lose track of the fact that for most of these schools, you hope that your yearbook is a profit-making tool
Yeah.
of some
Mhm.
nature. Now, for some districts, Katie barred the door. They're into like, hey, we have the best yearbook in the country. We don't care what it costs. That we're not, that's not us. So we have, that was part of what was so wonderful about you guys also, if I can backtrack a little bit, but you were very cognizant of that. You knew that we had a budget. You knew that we could only do this
Yeah.
and that. And we're going to turn a nice profit this year because I'm very conscious of what we do and what we don't do as far as
Yeah.
all the
That's
bells and whistles. Yeah. So a good game plan for exactly what you're going to do, and then just stick to it, and it
Yeah.
won't get out of control on you. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, with your, students, obviously sometimes challenges will arise. Were there any challenges that you guys kind of faced as a team this year? And what would you kind of like, what piece of advice would you give to
Oh
any
man.
advisors?
All right. So I forgot to tell you. So that whole staff of mine, I think it was 12 or 13, and then one or two kids don't want to stay or whatever. 9 of those 12 are seniors, and they
Oh,
are graduating.
wow.
So
Oh my goodness.
it's like losing the graduating class from a state championship team.
Wow. Oh my gosh,
So
that's a big
that,
number.
yeah. But that being said, you asked about challenges. When you're dealing with any kids, I love the high school group. I was in middle school for years doing the same thing, but I love these high school kids. But you are going to have personality issues. You're going to have, she said this, and I thought I was taking those pictures, and then you got, and trust me, if I could choose a staff, I would choose females over high school boys any day of the week. There's a maturity level that the boys don't want to hear about. But that being said, I don't have daughters, I have sons, but girls are girls. And so those challenges for all of us advisors are going to come up, and you have to kind of be very careful, because you can find yourself choosing favorites, or say you just have to almost kind of let kids always be politically correct and let kids kind of iron out their own issues. And if it
Mm-hmm.
gets to a point where it's really an issue, then of course you need to probably step in and say, look, we need to make some changes here. But
Mm-hmm.
you're a very, very lucky advisor if you don't run into trouble. And
Right. Yeah.
if you know, and if you're a teacher, you're a classroom manager already, and you kind of understand. And you know, I will purposely include some square pegs out of classes that I have. We talked about the selection process, that kid just needs somebody to believe in him.
Mm,
And that's a lot of fun too. It's very rewarding for that child to be
yeah.
part of a machine that the school looks up to. So keep
Yeah.
that in mind too. You might change a kid's life by including them in yearbook, and they may not produce a lot for you, but it's the notion that you believe in them.
Yeah.
That's the joy of being a teacher also, is working through the problems. But that really, you asked about, you know, what problems did we face? Deadline. We're at a high school. Kids have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stuff going on. A lot of, in the community I live in, a lot of kids have jobs outside of school. They work.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to, and that's why you want these deadlines to be reasonable and get them done
Mm-hmm.
early. Because I was up here till 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning during spring break, making sure that, and I don't ask for anybody's pity. It's a joy to do the yearbook, but it's kind of like what you sign on for.
Yeah.
And you can kind of alleviate that if deadlines get taken care of early, and tell the kids, we have to have this done by this date, even if you don't have to have it done for 2 weeks, because that
Mm-hmm.
way the work gets done and the stress doesn't fall on you at the actual stress hour. So
Yeah.
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 But other than that, no, just like kids kind of griping at each other. She doesn't do anything, or he said this. My gosh, the world's got bigger problems than that. So just kind of laugh and understand their children, and you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure, I mean, you have, 12, right? So that's a smaller group. So it's maybe a little bit more tight knit. There may be a little bit more clashing than,
There can be,
yeah.
and at the same
Yeah.
time, if if you're an advisor that has 20, 25 kids in yearbook, I'm not sure how much. I don't know. I think that's too much. And again, if you have that, that's what you have. You just have to say, okay, let this kid. We do marketing and we do announcements and
Yeah. Yeah.
we do have a Facebook presence. We're very lucky that we've got a little Facebook community page in this little town.
Nice.
And so
Yeah.
one of the moms up here handles like putting that and posting it to that Facebook group.
Oh,
And
awesome. Yeah.
then we've got, like some schools do, we have like the homepage of the school district has like a photo banner that runs across. And
Uh-huh.
so one of those pictures that, and we handle all those pictures also, just as a happenstance, but that's our advertising also. And so you can get kids that are a little quieter and don't want to be in the spotlight, and maybe they're
Yeah.
real creative and they can come up with ads
Yeah.
for the yearbook, and keep an eye on those ads. You want to make sure they're okay, but
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like feeding off of their strengths, and
exactly.
obviously they have, some students are very much like outspoken and they're ready to take on like leadership roles, and some, like you're saying, the more quieter students, maybe they can work on something different.
Sure.
Do you have like a specific like hierarchy in your classroom, like any student leaders, and like, you're mentioning kind of the square peg students that you like
Sure.
to bring on sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm sure there has to be like some form of mentorship that goes on within that, and
I I try. I think that'll be more prevalent moving on. Is I'm
Mhm.
more the guy that came in and brought those specific kids on board. But
Yeah.
yeah, we had a little bit of it. Seniors in high school are seniors in high school, and there's always that hierarchy, like, between seniors and freshmen, like they don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
We're all humans, for gosh sakes. But yeah, some kids are really good about it though. They help each other a lot, especially like the
Mhm.
techie end of camera use. That's been really nice, because some kids don't want it. Like, that's $1,000 camera. I'm nervous. I don't want to touch it. It's like,
Yeah,
put
yeah.
the strap around your neck and dive in, right?
Yeah.
If we break
Yeah.
a camera, we'll figure it out. But we've had some good leadership roles in that area from the upperclassmen. And it's fun because, man, I've got one young lady who, her photography skills, I didn't notice them last year. And that is what she wants to do. And
That's
so it's like
awesome.
feed that, you know.
Yeah.
But don't forget the kid that hadn't got a chance to shoot a picture yet.
Mm,
You know, give
yeah.
them a shot too, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, they're really, I don't have a hierarchy. I think just my style is like, look, everybody just kind of work together. And I've got a
Mm-hmm.
couple of quiet kids that I brought on for the first time this year that didn't really do much, but they got to watch it all.
Mm,
And the
yeah.
seniors kind of took up the slack. And one of my younger kids, it was a joy because he picked up the slack when he didn't have to and didn't even know what he was doing. And I said, Jaren, just jump on this. You're a good designer. Get these pages done. Show them to me. Don't be afraid. And he came up with some of
Mm,
the most wonderful. So you discover stuff under fire, you know?
yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. He needed that push and he took that responsibility. That's
Oh,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I lost him at the end of last week, said, Mr. Trimmer, I'm moving. I was like,
Oh,
oh, bummer. And that's going to
that's
happen to
sad.
all of us. You know, your best kid's going to
Yeah.
see. I had a senior or junior last year that outstanding athlete. And she just didn't want to do yearbook senior year. And she was a big part of the wheel the year prior. And
Mm-hmm.
bless her heart, she
Yeah.
made a good decision. She and her teammates won the state championship in volleyball this year. So
It's
probably a good
awesome.
decision to trim down what she had on her plate. So I totally
Yeah.
understand. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's bittersweet, you know, you
Yeah.
understand why, but it's also like, oh, takes the hit a little bit to the
Yeah.
yearbook and to the
Selfishly,
classroom. Yeah.
selfishly, she's yearbook. But
Yeah.
if you watch her on a softball field or on a volleyball court, it's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And then you mentioned that, okay, so you said 9 seniors, so that's quite a big group that are leaving.
Yes.
Now, after final submission, how are you kind of preparing for your next group of yearbook staff members?
It's a good choice. I've got if I could find it, I'd show you, but I have a list. Oh, here it is. It's all scribbled just so you can kind of see it. That's my thought process. It's kind of
That's
scary.
great.
All right.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's just from like going through each class and period and saying, okay,
Yeah,
these kids are good. And then you kind of quietly pull them aside and say, please don't say anything to anybody, but,
yeah.
and we get out of school pretty early here because Texas traditionally was an agrarian state. So we
Mhm.
are done at the end of May. We're absolutely finished with school. So we're finishing up doing this video, preparing to do this video and putting it together on Canva. And at that point, I told some of my younger kids today, actually, I said, we're going to start kind of talking about yearbook and I'll pull you guys aside and sort of show you what's going on here and get them ready.
Yeah,
But I think come August, the way we chose to do it this year, all doing it and creating it in Illustrator, it'll be a smooth transition for them. The toughest deal, and I don't know if any of the other yearbook sponsors run into this, but I mentioned photography and that we have seniors that have driver's licenses.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
huge for what we do because a lot of it's off campus and athletics are huge in this little community. We have FFA, kids show cattle, kids do agriculture, and everything is off campus. And
Yeah.
so for me moving forward and for some of the other advisors, that's going to be the challenge because I've got a lot of young kiddos that may or may not have driver's licenses next year. So the option is, okay, they're not on yearbook. Maybe I've got to go out into the school community and solicit kiddos like, look, you don't have to be in yearbook class, but I'll make a rock
Mm-hmm.
star out of you,
Yeah,
take pictures
yeah,
for me at whatever. So you got to have to be kind of creative in your, what's going to be missing for me next year is the thing that's got me little, I don't want to say concerned, but it is a concern of mine is,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
who's taking pictures next year?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like such a unique like situation. And then I mean, I'm sure there's other advisors that are dealing with that
sure.
too.
Oh yeah.
Um, do parents ever like volunteer to take like, their younger student that doesn't have a driver's license to go take those photos?
It'll happen. And I'm going to have to, like, I didn't have to worry about it this year. So that's new
Yeah.
territory on which I'll be treading.
Yeah.
One thing that we do, and I'm not sure it's different with legal statutes state to state, but my kids, like I've got one young lady, senior or otherwise, she's going to travel with the track team to they made it out of district, and we got like 25 kids moving on to what we call area. And then from there you go to state. And so she's going to travel with the track team tomorrow and go to the track meet and ride the bus with them and everything. And so that's an option as well. We'll even solicit pictures from parents, especially at the elementary school. Did you get a picture of the kids eating cookies with Santa? And you'll get some terrible pictures, but you get some good ones too. And you have to kind of go out and it's like panning for gold, you know, you get out there and do what you can.
You have to be very creative. That is, I mean, that's smart. Like thinking of those like alternate ways to try to get what you need to get. And like you said, like, from parents, from the community, from other students, you know, from advisors out there who are struggling with something similar or the same thing. Be creative, you know.
You have to. And you just can't get uptight about it. If you realize like you make a plan in your yearbook to have this content and it doesn't quite happen. It happened to us this year. And we just said, you know what? Elementary school is about little kids smiling and having fun and hanging on each other and being out on the playground and making goofy faces. And it's not, so some of the stuff we wished we could have captured, we didn't. And then we went back into the reams of photos that we had taken, just going over there and visiting the campus. And we came up with some really cute solutions and just kind of changed the titling of the page. And I think the community that has the little guys and girls and that they're interested in the yearbook, I think they'll be delighted with it. So you have to be willing to kind of bend with the wind a little bit on occasion.
Yeah. It's good advice. And it's, you know, that's great. Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your publication that you submitted it and you're done with it. Now you're working on the video. And obviously you and your staff members took a lot of care into creating it. It's come out beautifully. And obviously you have the graphic design background, design consistency, those are just important features of the overall final piece, you know, the final product that you have. And you know, we talked a little bit about this before, but your style guide that you included to kind of like ensure that consistency, would you be able to kind of tell us a little bit more about that and kind of why it was so important for all of your students to be able to kind of have that on hand?
Sure. So the viewing audience here, if you can imagine, and again, all of you have different backgrounds. My driving force is the fact that I'm a visual communicator. So choice of colors, fonts are really important, but also keeping things somewhat simple. I kind of use the example you would want to avoid, and perhaps in some chaos in a layout sometimes can be fun. It depends what your intent is. We try to kind of keep things simple because I always use the rule like, look, dude, someone's grandmother needs to be able to understand what he or she is looking at, and grandparents, if you will. And so it's kind of like, that's kind of like the sobering thought, like, oh, okay, I can't have, you know, 6-point type as a caption because, you know, granny's not going to be able to read it, you know? So we try to kind of deal with something that's a product that'll be universally received. Okay. And then color is really important. And the big focus on that style sheet, and I'm going to share that with you as we discussed earlier for you guys to kind of help sponsors out with, but it's just kind of shows the colors you're going to use. Make sure you're using this font at this size, etc. And that way, when you go through the yearbook, it's not chaotic, and that it's like, it's friendly and it's user friendly, to use terminology that we throw around a lot now. It's user friendly. And so we built, if any of you use Illustrator, you can picture an artboard here, right? Rectangularly oriented horizontally. And then what we did is to the left of it, so that if you zoom out in Illustrator, you've got like a little cheat sheet over here. And I call that a style sheet. That's kind of typical terminology in the magazine and publication field, where it's just like, look, this is the font you're using. Here's your colors. Here's your headlines. Here's your folios, the page numbers at the bottom. Here's
Yeah.
what it's going to look like. Just don't forget. Check your work against this sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids really loved it this year because they got to check their work, and it wasn't like just kind of willy-nilly and, oh, I didn't know we were supposed to use that font. And as an advisor, you're going to go back, and I even made mistakes when I laid out some of the sheets where I forgot to change a font. And I had to go back and fix it real quick in headlines. But that style sheet and having a game plan going in
Mm-hmm.
as far as just the aesthetics is
Mm-hmm.
really
Yeah.
important. In addition to that, I had a little sheet that showed students how to make sure they know how to take a 72 DPI large dimension photo. Just little things like, here's what you do. You open it, you've got to change the resolution to 300 DPI, but you do not want to resample it. So you have to, just little guides like that. And if that sounds
Yeah.
like foreign language to some of you folks, that's fine. I mean, it's like everybody has to learn at one point, but that is huge, because what will happen is Jessica or Sarah is advisors. They will have to go through files, and their software will tell you that picture is not right, and it's going to kick it out. And so
Mm-hmm.
the more you know about that as an advisor, ask your rep, ask your CSR person at United, hey, am I doing these pictures the right way? And that was so helpful to the kids. I literally did like a step-by-step for them, and I ran it off, and I had it at every workstation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
That's
one,
so helpful.
not one photo was DPI'd the wrong way. It was like, yes, the old guy
Nice.
got this one right, great guide. And the kids love it because it's less they have to stress about,
Yeah, yeah, I love that because, like maybe at the beginning of the year, you guys are gonna go over that and
Mhm.
they have it in their personal notes, but with that like constant reminder, they're like it's ingrained in their brain. Like this
Yeah,
is exactly what I have to do. And it's not like you just have to remember from when we talked about it. No,
yeah,
or like even something as simple as you kind of reminding them
sure.
constantly,
Yeah.
but like having it like visually there for them. And like you're saying, you're a very visual person. I'm sure some of your students as well are very visual as well, so having like those reminders there for them
Hmm.
is helpful. And I think that that's something a lot of advisors can take away from, those important things that staff members need to kind of keep a hold of
Right.
and are vital to the yearbook,
Absolutely.
be, that put that out there for them. And
Yeah,
the consistency, having that style guide that you have, that's wonderful. And like you mentioned, I'll put it in the description for everyone to be able to review and see for
sure.
themselves. But that's awesome, to be able to have that.
Hmm.
For me, I'm like thinking of if I were a student, just being able to have that and know like,
Sure.
okay, this is what colors I need to use. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? This is my font. Like
Hmm.
that goes such a long way.
It was real helpful this year. And then you'll have a student say, Mr. Trimmer, can I make this green a little bit lighter? And I will tell them, it's like, if it works and you need it to be lighter, but don't do it just because you want it to be lighter. I
Mm-hmm.
want to
Yeah.
know, I want to know from your knowledge of visual communication, why does that need to be lighter? Well, Mr. Trimmer, it contrasts with the headline. Enough said. You
That's
just told me you
awesome.
know what
Yeah.
you're doing, The
Yeah.
one thing while we're touching on this is that style sheet and what I discussed was based and pointed toward creating everything in Illustrator.
Uh-huh.
What's
Yeah.
cool about the publisher's software is a lot of those techie things about DPI and how huge your photo is that you place, that all gets taken care of when it goes into layout in United software. It
Yeah.
doesn't get taken care of when you do it in Illustrator. So there's
Mm-hmm.
a important thing there. Doing your yearbook pages and doing everything in Illustrator or InDesign, and I think it actually gets taken care of in InDesign if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
But in Illustrator, you can't take a picture that's this big at 300 DPI and place it into an artboard and do this with it, because all of that data is still there. And that's what Sarah and I ran into on some of my spreads, is my kiddos forgot that.
Yeah.
So always check with Jessica and Sarah on those little techie things, because they can tell you in a blink of an eye, these are too big. Here's what you got to do.
Yeah.
fix the problem. And there's a lot of techie stuff that I think advisors, that's what bums them out, because it just trips them up and it stops it from being fun. And
Yeah.
once you're on top of the techie end of stuff and you can head that stuff off at the pass, it's a much more enjoyable journey, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
appreciate you mentioning that, and that is why we offer like software because then, you
absolutely.
know, for advisors that don't understand the tech side of
Mhm.
things, we're able to kind of have that hands-on
Yeah,
software, explain it to them, show them the features and everything like that, and
sure.
you know, make sure that if it fits for them or if they want to use a different program, so
Yeah.
be it, you know.
For the
That's
new advisor, I would say use the software. And then and if you're a design geek like me or whatever, make sure you know what you're doing too, because you can build a huge file and it looks really nice on your Mac because it's able to process it. The moment
yeah.
you send it to Sarah and it's like a terabyte file, Sarah's got some words to have with you, so be careful.
So funny.
Yeah.
Uh, getting into like the almost to the final submission, you have to make sure everything's up to your standards, your
Mhm.
quality. How are you able to kind of ensure that all of those page spreads were completed the way that you like intended, and obviously that your students intended? I think obviously the style sheet plays a big role in having, you know,
Yeah, but you've got
consistency.
that final what our publisher terms, and I term it that way too, is your pre-flight. Um,
Yeah.
I wish I could find it. You give me 2 seconds. If I can find it
Yeah,
in
go
English, I'll
ahead.
share it with you. I don't want to take too much time, but what I did is not in Excel, but I created my own spreadsheet and
Mhm.
printed it. And so I had
Mhm.
columns for everything. And I proof it, and then my principal proofs it real quickly
Yeah.
for all the high school content. So all the administrators, so we have to send stuff to the middle school and we have to send our pages to the elementary school. And they check things for spelling. Another thing that I'm
Nice.
sure all you advisors have to worry about is what we call a no publish list.
Mhm.
You may have a district attorney whose children are going to school in your school district, and they're like, by no means, and they fill a form out at the beginning of the year. That'll lose you a job. So be very, very conscious of making sure who those kids are, that they can't be in the
Yeah.
yearbook. And I'm glad I mentioned that, because man, that can be a heartbreaker. And that occurs and somebody wants heads to roll, they will. It's like a
Yeah.
legal obligation.
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah.
got columns for all that stuff. And so we just check through all of it. And then it comes down to, okay, is the Illustrator file finished?
Yeah.
Is the PDF finished? Is it optimized as Sarah needs? It doesn't need to be crazy big. Have you sent it to Sarah? Did she send back? It looks cool. And so I've got check marks. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
that's that pre-flight. Um,
Yeah.
I think without that, what's going to happen is you will lose track at the beginning when you're submitting without any pressure. It's very likely those pages will be cool because you had a chance to look at them and everything's relaxed, right? And as you get
Yeah.
closer to deadline, it's like anything, you do not want to rush. You know, you're going to burn
Mhm.
part of your dinner if you don't plan, right? So
Yeah.
the same thing with I burn dinner all the time, but the that's why I'm alone. But the notion of that checklist is huge. And if you have
Yeah.
it all the way through, you will avoid um, the pitfalls of not having proofed something, and have that checklist. And I'll share with you what I did, for gosh sakes, Jessica, and I think it might be nice for some of our advisors. And I'm sure plenty of the advisors are well equipped and perhaps better organized than I. But if you're not, that organization, the planning, that's
Mhm.
what's going to make your job less stressful when it comes down to the 11th hour. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's important, you
Uh-huh.
know. Even like those people that are more type A or type B advisors, you know, make that checklist like you're saying, because like
Sure.
you're saying, it will make all the difference,
Oh, it's
right?
huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of y'all, like, you might be doing it for the elementary school. Some elementary school, it's just a bunch of moms on the PTA and they put together a scrapbook and it's cute as heck.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Not so much in our district. That we are responsible for everything. As the
Yeah.
district grows, that may change. So everything's got to be kind of slick.
Yeah, yeah.
and less scrapbooky looking. And so, yeah, being organized is, I think it's
Hmm.
kind of it's a virtue.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're a scatterbrain and you put together a good yearbook, I'm impressed. Like that would be, you know, I would be
Good job.
I want to be on your team. I can hide and you'd get all the work done for me. Yeah.
Right. So funny. Well, I mean, congrats to you and your staff for completing your yearbook. I know you guys still have the video, but that's
Yeah.
awesome. Another you down.
We're,
We're
we're
almost
real
there.
excited and we have to do ours so that we can distribute it before all our high schoolers graduate. And
Yeah,
so some people
yeah,
deliver yearbooks in the summer, as you guys know, and that's kind of what's expected and that's the culture. And that works kind of nicely too, for some people. But for us, yeah, and thank you for the congratulations. We feel very
yeah,
accomplished and
yeah.
being that that's our first book with y'all, we're excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, it is a huge accomplishment. You put an entire year's work of hard, like work, sweat, tears,
Yeah.
collaboration, just everything into it. So yeah,
It's
congrats.
the best part. It has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It's the kids' yearbook, and
Hmm.
I step out. I don't want any. I'll take all the beating. Why did you do this? I don't like the way the yearbook looks. I'll take all that. Let's take a
Yeah.
number and get in line. But for the kiddos, I want them to enjoy like all the kids in the cafeteria looking at their books when we distribute them. And
Yeah.
every year it's like joy on their faces.
Hmm.
They did that.
Yeah.
That is their baby, you know. That's the best
Yeah.
part of it is the kids.
Yeah. They literally helped create something that's so pivotal for like their school's history and something that they're going to be able to keep forever. It's part
Oh,
of like the legacy of their schooling experience.
it's
So
huge.
it's yeah, it's huge.
They
So yeah.
contributed a memento for the community.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's
And it's so awesome to like hear when those staff members just like really get it and they really just see like that, like the pride and the joy and
Mhm.
like the work that they were able to do. And
Sure.
I know you see it firsthand.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're so excited for you.
Well, and
Um,
I feel that, and I appreciate all the wonderful compliments that I was paid as the book kind of evolved. And you and Sarah said, "Hey, can we talk to you?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'd love to." You know.
yeah,
So
well, we
yeah,
really appreciate
me
you
too.
taking time out of your day to
Yeah,
be able to meet. And then I just have a few more questions for
sure.
you. You mentioned a little bit about, obviously you worked with a previous publisher before. And I just wanted to kind of get your feedback on how working with like a larger publisher kind of compares to working with United Yearbook. Obviously, we're a smaller publisher and kind of hear your pros and cons with that.
I've worked with two larger publishers. Um, I will say that whatever the name is, the largest we all kind of know about, a lot of it has to do with your rep. And because I don't want to talk poorly about a very successful organization. That's not my aim here. I
Mm-hmm.
think you're blessed when you find a really good rep. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my last experience that kind of made me realize I needed to move on and make some changes in our publishing choices was probably born of just the feeling that, man, we really didn't matter.
Yeah.
Prior to that, a fairly large yearbook publisher, a wonderful, wonderful rep. She ended up leaving that
Hmm.
company, and that was a heartbreaker for me because it was kind of like starting all over. But she was just utterly wonderful. She just like you guys. I'd put it on a parallel. It's like all three of you ladies that I've worked with. She was just so cool and attentive and
Yeah.
was like, Trimmer, just send me those files. I'll put them in for you. Don't worry about it. We did PNGs. Some of you folks might create PNGs and put them in. And she's like, don't even worry about it. You don't need to be on. And I'm like, why are you up at 3 a.m? She goes, oh, Trimmer, this is my life, you know? And so, and it's like her and her husband doing pretty well running being reps for this big company. And so it wasn't a problem for her, but I think that's the big issue is culturally, she did not reflect a big company persona. She was just so cool. And I
Hmm.
think there might've been if there was another rep for the same company. As a matter of fact, the next year I got a new guy. I was like, you've got to be kidding. Because I was expecting that same deal. So the deal is you and Sarah are not allowed to leave until I tell you so.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then switching gears now just to kind of give final words of advice to
Sure.
advisors out there. They're dealing with the stress of, their final deadline,
Mhm.
and going into summer. What's kind of your tips, tricks, ways that you would kind of give them advice to be able to kind of balance their stress at work and
I'll bet,
all the
I'll bet, I'll bet my answer is the same that you would tell me if I came to you for advice is sit with your staff, graduating or otherwise, and just say, look, and I'm very, I don't want to say I'm self-deprecating, but I'm very transparent with my kids. I'm like, look, if you have an idea, say something. I don't
Yeah,
know it all. And it's important that
yeah.
kids realize that. And then sit down and say, look, what did we have trouble with here this year? This was not all roses. Let's be honest.
Mm,
We had some
yeah.
stressful times. What were your problems? Tell me what I can do better as a teacher, and
Yeah.
get that feedback. And gosh sakes, if as an adult and as a teacher, if you can't deal with the fact or admit that you're not perfect, you're not going to grow, and the kids are going to see through it. Kids don't like
Yeah.
teachers that. So that would be, and then what went well? What did you guys like? What would you guys like
Yeah.
to see next year? And I think the sooner, you don't want to be doing this and burning your summer over it. Do it at the end of the year, do it at the very beginning of the summer, and then go on vacation and forget about it. But kind of reflect. I know I'm going to, and this has been a wonderful year, but
Yeah.
there's always room for what could we do different. And honestly, I mean, I joke about it, but with with you and Sarah, I owe you a better final curtain call than I did this year. It's like, I know what I'm going to do for you girls. I'm going to get these files a little bit better, a little more manageable, and make sure that certain things are taken care of. And other than that, I think it is reflect. It's like a football team or a one act play group. What did we do? Were you nervous? What do you want to do to get rid of that nervousness on stage? Do the same thing with your yearbook team and make a plan and then institute it and kind of make sure it's clear for everybody the following year, and do the best you can. Train wheels are going to go off the track every once in a while, but at least if you have a plan, you at least are pointed your ship in the right direction, or your train rather, from the word go, and you kind of have a goal,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think that's so important. You said feedback, it makes all the difference.
sure.
Acknowledging, where you fall short with your students, where you can get better. And,
Yeah,
if you're constantly improving each year, it's just going to get better each year, right? The final product is also going to be better as a result of you learning with your staff members, right? So yeah,
absolutely. And you can't do it all at once. Don't be overzealous.
yeah,
What I love, and we're going to try to take advantage of this with you guys in the fall, is a little photography seminar. I think from the gentleman that you guys mentioned to me that did at least, he might be retired, but did one of the books and just did beautiful work. You're never too good to learn. And that
yeah,
one girl I mentioned and sang the praises of, she's very proud of what she does, and I have to handle her with kid gloves, but you can't learn too much, sports
yeah,
photography and all. So little bit at a time, like what can we do better? Let's teach the kids how to use cameras, more bells and whistles. Don't just put it on automatic. But at
yeah,
the same time, don't try to conquer the world in one step.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Ralph, this was wonderful. I just really thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I mean, I know you guys are still working on the video, and I know that
sure.
you're ready, you're eager to go home, but I just really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me and, have this talk.
Well, me too, Jessica, and I appreciate you guys, and I'm flattered you all asked me on board, and hopefully our discussion here helps out some of the advisors, and I'll follow up with you on some of the materials we talked about sharing, and look forward to chatting with you before the school year is out.
Okay, sounds
All
good.
right.
And any comments, questions, leave them down below. Thank you again, Ralph, and
You're
I'll see
welcome.
everyone in the next episode.
Sounds good.